There we go. All right. Um, all right. Welcome, you guys. Welcome to Wisdom Soup. It's so great to have you guys join us. So for those of you who are new here, who are not familiar with Wisdom Soup, you guys know this Wisdom Soup is something we've been doing for a long time. So for those of you who have been with me this whole time, you know this is like we are old friends at this point, which is so cool. But yeah, we've been doing Wisdom Soup for I mean maybe 6 years. Molly, how long has it been? Like 6 years? I don't even know. But
Yeah,
we, yeah.
2016.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, every second Thursday of the month we join and come together. And we started this out way back when here where I live in Seattle, Washington. We started it as an in-person meetup. So mostly so that we could find our peace because the spiritual journey can be a lonely one. You know what I mean? Like we are trying to figure our stuff out, and frequently our frequency is going up, and not all of our friends are of the same mindset. And so we need new friends. So that was like Wisdom Soup. And we would always get a new speaker every month. And the idea behind it was just to find whatever topics that I thought were interesting, whatever topics would be fun, that would expand us, that would open us up to new ideas, learning new techniques or new approaches, new thoughts that were in the metaphysical realm. And yeah, and it was just an excuse to grow and have fun. And the name Wisdom Soup came from that idea that when you make a soup, you just grab whatever's in the fridge and you throw it in the pot, but everybody gets to make their own soup, right? That you get to take what works for you and leave out what you don't like. So if there's stuff here that is for you, awesome. If there's not, take it as like, okay, that was interesting, and you just leave what doesn't resonate. And I find for myself that what resonates for me has changed dramatically over time. That there were times when stuff that I now take for granted, there was a time that I would have thought, oh, that's crazy. What are crystals? They're just rocks. So, yeah. So, anyways, we all change. But anyway, so tonight, here's the crazy thing. In number of years that we've been doing this, 6 years, whatever it is, we have never, ever, ever done a wisdom soup about tarot, which to me is kind of mind blowing because it's like such an amazing tool for working with your own spirituality. Lots of us use oracle cards. Like, who has an oracle card deck? I mean, so many of us, right? Like, pretty much everybody here, I bet, has an oracle card deck. And they're fun because you just pick a card and it's like, and it's always, serendipitous and guided and amazing. But with a tarot deck, it gives you layers, it gives you a whole story. So it's an amazing tool, and you can do it for yourself, right? And it's a great way. I find that using these kind of tools, the goal is to strengthen your connection to your own guidance. So that's what we're all after. So the tarot can do that for you. So I thought, phenomenal. Well, I just happen to know a really, really good tarot reader. So I brought her here to meet all of you. So I met her at a phenomenal girls' weekend with some of my friends. One of my friends has this amazing beach house, and I get lucky enough to go out there regularly. And a couple of times now, we have had Heidi Dawn come out and join us. And she does sound healing, and she's an incredible singer, like, wow, incredibles. And she may give us a little bit of a sound healing song at the end of it. And she's a sound healer, but the resonance of her voice, the healing quality of her voice is out of this world. So that may be something we can talk her into. But then she also would do tarot readings for us. And she's certified in tarot. She's extremely knowledgeable about it. So I thought, who better to come and share what she knows with us? So I would love to introduce you guys to, let me bring her up here, to Heidi. Hello, Heidi. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, I am so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So tell us how you would like to, and let me tell you a little bit about Heidi. So as I said, she's the certified specialist. And Heidi, how did you come into learning about tarot? I know your background, you actually came from a religious background, like so many people in this group, that you were raised in the Mormon tradition and then gradually found your way out. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and kind of on that transitional path out of that spiritual structure and framework into my own spiritual framework. My sister actually sent me a tarot deck. And she said, I think that this is going to help you process and kind of, create your new story as you move forward. And I didn't know what tarot was. I had never heard of the cards before, but as I worked with them, I found that they were an incredible tool for asking questions and finding answers, and lots of incredible journal prompts. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
That is awesome. Yeah, I find that is whatever it is, it can be a thing sometimes where you walk into a bookstore and the book falls off the shelf into your arms and it's just the book you need. And I think tarot was just the tool you needed to help you on your journey. So where do we start? So tell us how you would like to share this tool with us.
Well, I've never done a setup like this before, so I don't know if we can pause and ask questions as we move
Yeah,
along.
absolutely. So what we'll do is, if you guys have questions, or then go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll moderate, and that way I can interject so it doesn't get you in the flow, but everybody gets heard. So chat is open, and if anybody has questions for Heidi, go ahead and put them in the chat.
Okay, great. Well, the way I've kind of structured the presentation, we're going to start with a brief history of tarot, just to kind of explain what it is and where it comes from. Then I'm going to move into sort of the three main ways that I like to use tarot for self-exploration and self-discovery. So I'll start with the history piece of it, and then we'll take a little break and you can ask any questions that you might have, and then we'll kind of move on and take it in steps like that. Does that sound good?
Perfect. Sounds great.
Okay. So tarot kind of emerged as we know it, as a card game with the trumps and the suits and everything, in about 1440. And there was a wealthy family in Italy, the Visconti family, and they commissioned an artist, and his name was Bonifacio Bembo, and they wanted him to design an original deck of cards for their family. A lot of wealthy families would do this. This was before we had printing presses, and so they would have to hire a painter to paint original decks for their families. And when he did this, they named the deck Tarocchi. And so this is kind of where we get the name tarot from. It kind of derives from that game. And it was played very similarly to bridge. It wasn't like it wasn't used for divination like we use it today immediately. Although in Italy, it was very popular for people to draw cards, especially from the first 22 cards in the deck, the trump cards, or the triomphe cards as they called them. And they would make predictions and stories out of for people's lives. And they did this as kind of a pastime in a game. And so in the 17th and 18th centuries, we had a big shift happen where the Tarot de Marseille deck was made. It kind of looks like this. I don't have a Marseille deck, but this one is done in the style of Tarot de Marseille. And what made this deck special was it was printed. So the images, which kind of looked like this, were printed on wooden blocks. And they were made available to the public. So for the first time, people were able to have a deck of cards of their own. And when this happened, tarot really started to take off in a new way, and it expanded. So it moved into France and Switzerland. And as it did this, more and more people started to create different versions and stylizations of the cards and kind of interpreted them differently. But it wasn't until we had kind of a how-to book that was created that tarot really kind of started getting picked up as a divination tool. And that book came about in the late 1800s, and it was picked up by a young woman named Marie Lenormand. And she was a celebrity cartomancer. She was a celebrity card reader in France. And she didn't actually use the Tarot de Marseille deck. She used a different deck. They call it the Lenormand deck today. It had 36 cards instead of 78 cards. But she claimed to read for many, many very prominent figures of the time. She read for the masses, and she wrote a number of books on divination. And so when she did this, she kind of transitioned the use of cards into a divination tool. And another thing that she did was she sort of created the image of women reading cards. And so women using cards as a pastime or for a profession was seen as acceptable because of this, because she really heralded in that image. And then in the 1900s, we have another shift that happened with the Pamela Coleman Smith deck. Now, this is a tarot deck that you will probably recognize when you see. The reason why, so she was commissioned by a man named Arthur Waite. They were a part of a cult group called the Golden Dawn. And women were a part of this group. And so she was actually a part of the Golden Dawn. And when Arthur Waite commissioned her, he hired her because she was a very intuitive artist. She was synesthetic, and so she often, painted what she saw when she heard music. And she was just a very intuitive person. And so he wanted her to illustrate the deck. But she was the first person to illustrate cards with a full picture. So before that, in the Tarot de Marseille deck, they would look like this. The trump cards were fully illustrated. So let me find a trump card here to show you. Here's the moon in the Tarot de Marseille style. So it would have a full illustration, but a card like the minor suits wouldn't. And so this made it actually kind of hard to read because people couldn't intuit what a picture of 6 cups meant, or 3 cups, or 4 swords. And so Pamela was the first one to take an image like this. This is the 4 of Swords, and turn it into an image like this that told a complete story. Now, as an example, this is a reference. This 4 of Swords depicts the night before a man was knighted and brought into the knighthood. And he would spend the night, this was a medieval practice, he would spend the night on a coffin to kind of reflect the promise that he was about to make, the commitment he was about to make to his king and crown, to give his life and to live a life of service. And so this card kind of has a meaning of rest and reflection. And she chose a story to depict that. And all of her cards do this. Both the first 22 major arcana cards and all of the suits that follow it. And this was completely new. No one had done this before. And we still use her deck today. And most decks that you will find are patterned after the choices that she made to depict these cards. And so it really changed the history of tarot. And she very much ushered in the cards as we know them today. So I think that's kind of my breakdown of the history. I'm just going to pause and see if anyone has any questions kind of about the history that
there are some people. One of the person was asking, and I don't know how it fits in with how you wanted to present things, but what do you think about people coming up with questions that you could do a simple answer if they had a question?
Oh yeah, I think that would be a great practice. And we can definitely do that kind of towards the end. I'll give you I'll kind of give you some tools for how you can do that for yourself first, and then I can definitely model that for you as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, and if you do have a question in mind that you want us to, so we wouldn't be able to do all the questions, but if you want to throw a question in the chat, then later on after we're through the in the talk, then we will take a look at a few, and that would be a super cool way to see how this is put into action.
Definitely.
All right. So yeah, so that's it so far. So yeah, so please let us know, how do we do this?
Okay, so we've kind of got the stage set and we know where tarot comes from. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that tarot at its heart is a storytelling tool. So the first 22 cards of the major arcana, these are the first 22, they're often called the Fool's Journey. And they reflect the process from birth until rebirth. And so it's the story of a life. And more importantly than understanding the definitions of tarot cards, I think this is what most people miss. I think a lot of us jump into tarot thinking I have to know what all of these 78 cards mean. But the most important thing to get about tarot is, how do I build a story with these pictures? How do I bring them together? So for the major arcana, I'm going to walk you through kind of a meditation that will carry that will carry you through each of the images, telling the story of the Fool's journey. And then we're going to talk about how we can build our own journey using these 22 cards. So, so first we're going to get started with the Fool. Now with the Fool, the journey begins. This is your very first step. And as you begin the journey, you're met by a magician. The magician offers you all of your skills and talents that you will need to take with you on your journey throughout life. Then you find the high priestess, who lifts the veil to your intuition, reminding you that in addition to your skills, talents, and the different aspects to your personality that you develop, the intuition will be an important tool to carry with you. After the veil is lifted, you're introduced to the mother figure of the tarot, the Empress. She is where we focus on all of our nurturing aspects. And the father of the tarot, the Emperor. He is the provider, the protector, and he shows great pride in his children. Then they send you off to school, where you're taught by the Hierophant. He is the teacher. When you're at school, you meet lots of people. You have lots of experiences with society. Your world begins to expand from outside of yourself into meeting others and loving other people. Then a transition moment happens with the Chariot. We're taken away from the school and on a new adventure. On this adventure, we gain strength, we gain further independence with the Hermit, and we gain a map for the future. Then Justice comes in and says there's still more to this journey. There's more that we need to resolve. And he invites you to continue to grow. The Hanged Man comes in when your world is turned upside down as you meet death and you meet great change. Then Temperance appears to remind you that you are safe amidst change, that you're not in this alone, and that healing can come out of change and growth can come out of change. Then the Devil appears to challenge that, and he challenges that perspective. And as that perspective is challenged, you fall from the tower, and it may feel like you're in free fall in this moment of life. But Temperance is there with you, and she scoops you up and she takes you to the star, the moon, and the sun. She's carried you into heaven itself. Judgment asks, what have you learned in this journey? And as you think about what you have learned and how far you've come, the cycle begins anew with the world. This is the culminating moment when we have reached our higher self. So as you can see, this really is a story of a journey. And so the first tool that I encourage my students to do is to go through their life journey, to, when you pull the Fool card, to get out that journal, my little visual here, you get out your journal and you write the Fool, and you talk about a time in your life where you began a new journey, and then you move on, the Magician, what are my skills and talents? And so you journal around that. Well, some of my skills are I'm a good communicator, or I have a big heart, or I have a gift of expressing myself through art and creativity, things like that. The High Priestess comes up. When is a time when you were able to really trust and rely on your intuition? So as you move through the major arcana, you'll start to define these cards within the terms of your own life experience and your own journey. And that is a really, really powerful way to read the tarot, because it needs to be your story coming from your own perspective. So I don't know if you guys are taking notes, but the best way I have found to create this life story with these cards is to ask a question with kind of the question that character would ask you. So do you guys want me to go through what those questions are so you can take note of them, or I don't know, maybe watch the second time? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Is everybody clear on that? By the way, that was awesome. Everybody loved how you walked through. Like, I've never seen tarot presented that way, like the story, and it just made it so much easier to understand how all the pieces fit together. So that was awesome. So yeah, so definitely. So what is tell us, what are these questions that will help us go?
So the fool would ask, when did I take my first step on a new uncharted path? The magician would ask, what are my greatest skills and talents? The high priestess would ask, when was a time trusting my intuition led me in the right direction? The empress, what impact did my mother figure have on me in my life? What is the story I have around the concept of mother? The emperor, what impact did my father figure have on me in my life? What is the story I have around father? Hierophant, when did I feel I truly left home for the first time? What life lesson did I gain with that transition? The lovers, when do I remember my world expanding outside of myself for the first time? When did I fall in love or have a friend I deeply cared for? When did I first feel the needs of another person becoming as important or even more important than my own needs? The chariot asks, what are my core values and are my actions in alignment with those values? This is where a lot of people get stuck in the chariot, transitionally speaking, because the chariot can't move forward unless our actions are in line with our values. Strength, when was a time in my life I needed to be strong for myself or others? The hermit, when was a time I needed to look inward to find my inner light? How do you feel when you're alone? That's another question that the hermit really encourages us to ask and to sit with. The wheel of fortune, how do I return to my center when everything else is spinning around me? When is a time I've been out on the outer rim of the wheel versus the hub? So I kind of like to give people this example. I call this the map in the story because it kind of looks like a map in my mind. But the Wheel of Fortune asks us, when are we out here being spun? And how do we move here to the center where it doesn't matter what's happening around us, we're not getting pulled into it because we're at the center. So when is a time I've been on the outer rim of that wheel? And when is a time I've been in the center? So think about both of those times. Justice, in what area of my life have I found resolution? Are there any areas still seeking resolution? The Hanged One, has there been a time in my life when I feel the world was turned upside down on me? Or what were the challenges during that time? And what were the new insights and perspective gained? Death, when have I experienced a major change? Temperance, what healing came about because of that change? What new balance or equilibrium did I find after change? This is kind of an uncommon perception of death and temperance. You won't hear anyone else say this because it's in my own imagination. I imagine death and temperance in a partnership. I always imagine them coming in together. I have almost pictured them as like a romantic partnership, and his thing he will always say changed forever, and temperance would say changed for better. So that's always how I imagine the two of them. So in my mind, death and temperance always work together. The Devil, when have I felt stuck or beholden to something in my life? The Tower, when is a moment I have felt I was in free fall or a moment I was in limbo, feeling like the rug had been pulled out from under my feet? The Tower is that image of lightning striking a tower and two people are falling from that building. And it's very much that feeling of suspension. And then we have the Star. When have I experienced healing and renewal? And what brought that about? How did I get there? The Moon. The Moon is all about shadow work. So when do I tend to judge others? Is there something I see in myself that I want to change? I ask those questions because those judgments are often what lead us to those shadow parts of ourselves. When we're seeing others and judging something or we don't like something, it's often it's a reflection back inward. So that helps us find that moon shadow work. And Judgment. What are some of the greatest life lessons you've learned so far? And then the World the world is when have I seen a culmination in my life? When have I seen a moment where everything made sense, you know, where all of the steps kind of came into focus and I saw exactly what led me to where I am. So these are really great journaling prompts. And just go to my notes real quick. Oh, and you will find when you do this process, it doesn't have to be in chronological order. So you may find maybe the Fool is a recent experience in your life, and the World may be a moment from your childhood. It doesn't have to be orderly. If you want to, you can put them in chronological order, like if you've written them out on individual papers, and this can be a really wonderful way of kind of getting a bird's eye view of your journey. Or you might find that you have had a really big journey and you want to look at it within the context of these 22 questions and these 22 cards. And so you can always apply them to a specific event or experience in your life, but it doesn't have to look any certain way. It's just a reflection of your journey, and it can just kind of, there's no wrong way to do it. That's the beautiful thing about tarot, is there's really no wrong way to tell the story, because it's your story.
That was super cool as journal prompts. And I can imagine how, like you said, when you attach your own story to it, then the card takes on a whole new meaning for you. One thing I was going to say for people, if you're madly trying to scribble down the questions as she's giving them, there will be the recording of this. So you could always go back to the recording and play it again. So if you miss something, don't worry. I will be posting it on the Wisdom Soup YouTube channel. And Heidi, I was just thinking, maybe if you have notes of those questions, can you just hold them up to the screen for a minute, and you guys could just take a screenshot? So if you hold the questions up to the screen, up to the camera, just perfect. And just hold it there for a minute, a little closer. Maybe, is that clear, you guys? A little bit closer. And I think it's a little blurry. Let's see. Let's try to get it crispy. Maybe if I put my glasses on, it won't be blurry.
I don't know. I don't think my camera is quite as sharp as
it's
yours.
pretty. Oh, there you go. That's pretty clear, I think. If you guys can see it, there you go. All right, so just hold that for a sec. You guys can take a screenshot and have it. Perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And like I said, there'll also be the recording for you guys. So you can go back and listen to it.
Yeah. Also, if you guys are on TikTok or Instagram at all, I go over all of this stuff on my content, on my social media. The Fool's Journey is up there that I read through earlier. And I'll even post a special video with these questions for you guys. So you can also get them that way.
And on TikTok, you're Heidi Dawn, right? DAWN.
It's Tarot Dawn on TikTok.
Tarot Dawn. Okay, perfect.
On Instagram, right, there's a dot in between the Tarot Dawn, because Tarot Dawn was taken, sadly.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to, let's see, I'm just going to kind of catch up to where I was in my notes here. Okay. All right. So I think I was going to just kind of show you a couple examples with how to do that from my own life. So I was just gonna, let's see. And this is a thing too about tarot cards. You don't have to pull without looking. Sometimes you look at a card and you say, oh, I feel inspired by that, or I want to focus on this card today.
By the way, about that deck, so you showed us the 2 decks earlier, and I think that first deck is the one that I have, and it doesn't have any, it's basically just, the swords just look like swords. That one, so what is that one called? The one that has the more intuitive picture?
So this is the Pamela Coleman Smith deck.
Okay.
And you can find a number of decks that are done in this style.
Yeah.
So just look for, what you want to look for is when you get past the major arcana cards and the court cards, because the court cards are usually illustrated. You just want to make sure you're picking a deck that illustrates its pictures, its suits, with a full illustration.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And even like Pamela Coleman Smith's deck, I think she has one card that I think it's the 8 of Wands, that is just 8 wands. And it tells less of a story, but there's still a story there. So, okay. So let's see, I want to go back. All right. So I was just going to give you a couple examples from my own life. So for instance, when I left the Mormon church, what I kept finding, the tower card kept showing up. And this was very much where I was, right? So this had been my religion and my religious, like my spiritual structure and paradigm I left when I was 38. So it was like only 2 years ago. And so I was in this free fall moment, right? And so this card showing up was really, it felt like a reflection. And then I was able to look at the star and I was able to start to just decide, what does healing look like for me? You know, once I move from this place, what does this start to look like? You know, the Fool always makes me think of having babies, because that's such a new experience every time. And it doesn't matter how many children you have, each one is a brand new experience. I have 4 boys and the last 2 were twins. And so it just, every time I see the Fool, I'm like, oh, that's motherhood. You know, and then the Magician, it's, you know, it always makes me think of my skills as an artist, as a creator, as a storyteller, as a singer, as a friend. So in those ways, whenever I pull the cards, they have these foundational meanings that are highly personal. And whenever I teach tarot, I always remind people that building your own definition of the card is the first step. Like I said in the beginning, we're always so excited to get to the definitions, but what does the definition mean? But the whole process is going to be so much more effective for you if you have a personal relationship to each one of the cards and they mean something to you individually. It's also going to help you sift through the literally hundreds of interpretations that you'll see of the different cards. You will start to recognize some patterns, but then you'll read books and there will be completely contradictory interpretations of the same card. But if you've already determined what that means for you, you'll be able to align that meaning with what your heart has already told you. Oh, I interpret this card more like this. And so you'll be able to kind of sift through all of that information, and it's going to focus it, you know, to your own personal definition. You know, it'll just help you focus that as you're sorting through all of it. And until my book comes out, because I feel like I feel like I've got great definitions of the cards.
Emily was just saying you should write a book.
I am working on it. I am. I just submitted the first chapter to a first chapter contest, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, congratulations! Yeah. Fingers crossed for you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna kind of move on to the next piece of reading tarot cards, and that is, we want to find powerful questions. Questions unlock the door to our inner wisdom. Just like I used questions to help you work through that first 22 major arcana and kind of gain an understanding, we want to do that with all of the cards in the deck. I always tell my clients that you have all the answers, not a deck of cards. And the cards are kind of there to help prompt you. So the very first thing that we're going to do before we know any meanings of the cards is we're just going to work with observation. So these are some of the questions that I teach people to ask when they're looking at a card for the first time. You want to ask, what do I see? And then you want to describe the picture. So I have a Queen of Cups just sitting here on top of my deck. So this would look like, what do I see? I see a woman. She's in white. I see she's on a throne. And she has a chalice. She's holding this giant cup. She's not drinking from it. She's looking at it. I see there's water. I see there's an angel here and here and here. These cherubs. And so you're just going to kind of explore the card and you're just going to take note. And then you want to ask, is there anything in this imagery that I feel particularly drawn to? So for me, I'm actually really drawn to the cherubs. Those feel significant to me. Is there a reason I feel drawn to this particular aspect? Does it remind me of something? Am I confused by it, intrigued by it, comforted by it? Does it look beautiful to me or unsettling? So we really want to figure out, how does this make me feel? I feel pretty serene when I look at this card. Now, do I see anything here that feels relative to me or my life story? Well, I love children, and I was really drawn to the children in this card. And so then we're gonna, now that we've really kind of put ourselves and immersed ourselves in the imagery, if at this point nothing is sticking out to you as a message, then you can start to look into the meaning of the card. So now I know that the Queen of Cups her meaning is all about being at peace with emotions, including the emotions of others. I know that the Queen of Cups is highly creative. She's highly intuitive, and she's very she's emotional, but she's very emotionally mature. So now knowing that about her, I can add that kind of to the layers of what I see. Like I said in the beginning, these little cherubs really stood out to me, and they felt very much like children to me. And these children make up her throne. And so now I can kind of say, I'm kind of sensing this importance around making children important, about, they are my legacy. They are what makes me special. I am the queen in my home. So you can start to kind of apply it in layers like that. And then I wanted to talk about, so we can both find questions in the cards, and of course we can ask cards. People have been asking questions always. So, but we want to ask powerful questions. We want to ask open-ended questions. We want to try to avoid yes or no questions. And so I just kind of was listing out some powerful open-ended questions. They might look like, how can I look at this from a different perspective? What can I do differently here? What can I learn from this? How can I get the support that I need? What can I do to be supportive? How can I move through this? What's holding me back? A lot of how can I, what can I, those types of questions. Those are going to be the most impactful when we're working with tarot. Any questions so far?
That's awesome. John is saying fascinating overview. Thanks. So glad there's recording after. Yeah, there's a lot of really good content here. And the questions you just gave are, those you could apply to kind of any sort of inquiry but it's a really great idea in terms of working with the cards, because it gives you a structure that you're going to then be able to work through and answer and connect with your own guidance. I love that.
Yes. And I always encourage people, look at the card first. Even when I do tarot readings, at this point, I know the meanings of all of the cards, but I will still stop myself and say, before I apply these meanings, what do I see? Because more important than the meanings of the cards is creating the story. It's finding the story. And that can get really hard if we have multiple cards that we're looking at and they all have different definitions, but we're not allowing ourselves the freedom to move outside of those definitions to see what the story is telling. So there are always multiple ways you can look at the cards and find the story. Okay. So that was kind of my second point that I wanted to go through, was the questions. So we went through telling our life story with the major arcana. We went through asking powerful questions. The last part that I wanted to talk about was to challenge our current perspectives and viewpoints through imagination and creativity. So this is what I'm talking about when I say letting go of the definitions and just playing with the cards. So we can imagine that we're in ancient Italy and we are just making up stories with our friends. I actually do this with my children all the time. They don't know any of the meanings of the cards, but I have a Tarot for Kids deck that I use with them, and we pull them out and they just make up stories. And so I'm just going to kind of go through prompts for how you can do that with these cards. All right. So again, we're going to be asking questions. So we're going to pull a different card this time. Pull the Four of Cups. So we're going to say, actually, let's pull 3. Let's kind of build a story here. Just the 3 that were on top of my deck here. So we're going to ask, like, are the characters looking at each other? What's happening here? So, here this guy's these two are looking in the same direction, but he's kind of looking down. So you can see that he's not really paying attention to them. She's actually kind of looking down too. Both of these seem very focused on what they're doing. His gaze is actually a little higher and off in the distance. So where are the characters looking? Are they interacting with each other, or are they ignoring each other? What is happening? Then we want to ask, do they know each other? What are their personalities like? What would they say to each other if they bumped into each other? If the story had a beginning, a middle, and an end, what would that look like? What's happening in that story? Do the places in this card represent one land or different lands? Are we jumping through different places? What happened just before this scene? What happened just after? If you entered this scene, how would the people respond? Would they be surprised? Do newcomers jump into their world often, or is this an anomaly? What would they say to you? Would they be surprised? Would you like spending time in this card, or would you want to get out of this imagery? How can you be helpful in this scene or story? If you could redraw something in this card layout, what would you draw? If you could redesign this card and its messaging, how would you create it? Now, you don't need to go through all of those questions. Those are just kind of prompts to get you started. So let's just play with these. All right, so I kind of liked where we were going with their gazes. This person is really focused, this person's really focused, and this person's kind of looking off in the distance. Now I see he's kind of moving forward. He's on a mission, but these two people are waiting. They're just sitting. They don't seem to be doing anything. So I'm almost wondering, what if they're together? What if they're doing their own thing? Maybe he's kind of off in the hills here. She's over by the water. He's kind of out over here by the trees and the fields and the forest. They're in the same land, but they're in the land of cups. I see they both have cups. So they're both in the same place. They're both in the same land. He's the Knight of Wands. He's in a different place, but I think he wants to move over here. He wants to get to this place. He wants to get to a place where he can focus, because they are so focused and he isn't as focused. He's looking off in the distance. What is in the land of cups that he wants? What is it over here that he's trying to get to? What does he need here? What are they focusing on that he wants to be able to focus on? Well, I think of cups and I think of water. And I know that I didn't go over frameworks with you because that's a completely different class, but the cups represent emotion and the wands represent passion. And so maybe this knight is trying to set aside, relax some of his passion, cool down some of his fire energy with some of this water energy. Maybe he needs to take a break from working so hard and racing so fast toward his goal that he can kind of rest and set his gaze down again and just cool down, cool off, take some time to replenish, take some time to drink some water, take some time to get back in touch with his emotions. So this was a tarot reading that I didn't even use the definitions of the cards. I just created a story. I looked at what I saw. I kind of imagined what was happening, and I found this journey of rest and reprieve. Now, we could have gotten here lots of different ways, and you might have come to different conclusions yourself. Given the meanings of these cards, if I had just gone entirely off of meanings, it would have been a different reading. But one isn't right or wrong. It's just a different way. And I feel like when we learn this process of observing the pictures and building a story, it's going to help with that later period of time when we know the card definitions, to be able to weave it together into a story. Because if we don't know how to do that, we're just going to kind of be stuck with like, well, okay, I know that this is like a fast moving, passionate energy, and this person's in touch with their emotions, and this person is, kind of withdrawn and introspective. And we're going to have these definitions that we don't really know how to bring them together. So that is the most important skill. That's the most important skill I wanted to teach tonight, is just looking at the pictures and pulling together a story and finding that message in the story. Sometimes there won't be a message in the story. I mean, my 5-year-old, he's so cute. The other day he did a reading and he was like, these people are getting married and they're on Mars, and it was just really silly and fun. And sometimes it'll look like that. And that's fine too, because when we allow our imagination to just play, and we're not so focused on it has to mean something, or we have to have a profound insight, or we have to figure out, the solution to the problem, that can really start to create a barrier. And then if we start to get into, I have to remember what the cards all mean, that can also create a barrier to our intuition. Our intuition loves stories. We all think in terms of stories. When we describe our life, we're telling a story. We think in pictures, we think in dialogue. It's always a story. We don't think in definitions. So trying to read the cards by definitions doesn't work very well, because it's just not how our brains work. And it's really not how the game was meant to be played. So, yeah.
I love that. So now that you brought it all together, would you be willing to go over the questions that you used in terms of the inquiry for coming up with your story? If you could just read, now that we know how you use it, can you just quickly go through those questions again? I think that might be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. The observation questions at the end, or the questions?
Yeah, the observations at the end. Yeah, just a few of them, just to remind us. Like, I remember one of them was, are they in the same land?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are just meant to be imaginative, playful questions. You could probably come up with more. These were just kind of what I came up with. But what happened just before you walked into the scene, or just before you pulled the card? Like, you could ask, what was she doing right before she got here? Maybe she just got done with all of her chores and now she's taking a break, things like that. Or what's going to happen right after she has her break? What's next on her list? Or does she even have a list? Things like that. So what happened before and after? If you entered this scene, how would people react? Do people show up in their world often, or is this a rare occurrence? Are they surprised to see you? What would they say to you? Would you love spending time in this card? There are some cards in the tarot that are just really beautiful. Like this card, I'd love to hang out with her. It seems like a really pleasant place to be. But, there are other cards that have imagery that isn't quite so pleasant. And, like that tower that you saw earlier, and maybe we wouldn't want to be there. So if you had to leave, how would you get out of that situation? If you were in this card, how could you help the character in the card? The swords in particular in the tarot deck have a lot of entrapment. You'll see women that have, they're blindfolded and they're tied up and they're like surrounded by swords. So how would you help that person? How would you offer assistance? How would you help them get out of their predicament? And how would you redraw it? That was a question that I often asked myself. These cards were created in the early 1900s, 1909. And so, what is the story you would tell with this messaging? So let's see, for instance, this is the Three of Wands, and this card is all about taking your first steps on a new adventure, a new journey, getting ready to take that first step. The card that came before it is the call. You've answered the call. You're in your traveling clothes and you're out the door. How would you portray this card? I asked myself that question, and I ended up illustrating an entire tarot deck of my own. Here, I'll show you what I did for the Three of Wands, actually, since we're just sitting here. Hopefully I can find it quickly. I did actually just submit this deck for publication to US Games too, and they're interested and they're going to get back to me in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Annie is saying this has totally reminded me and prompted me to find my cards. It has been a long time. That is awesome.
Right.
Oh, beautiful.
So this was my concept of the Three of Wands. the new adventure, the journey, being called, you're walking out the door. So you know the front door is open, the sky is blue, there's clouds, and we're all packed, and we've got the 3 flowers because wands are flowers in my deck. So how would you reimagine this? You know, what's a 3 of Wands moment in your life?
It is very cool.
A really powerful practice that I have my students do um, is to draw a card every day and go ahead and look up the meaning. So you kind of, first, of course, observe the card like I've taught you to do, look up the meaning, and then write down that experience in your life. So think of a time when you traveled, or think of a time when you embarked on a new journey, or just like we personalized the major arcana, I have my students do that with the minor, with all of the cards. And again, it just builds that very personal relationship with the cards and with their meanings.
That is super cool. What a fun way to approach it. Wow, I love it. It makes me think of that going through that process would really help you to access your subconscious thoughts as you're trying to work through to make a story out of the cards. Everybody's going to come up with a different story, but it's going to reflect what's happening for us beneath the surface. So maybe to help us access some of that inner truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And let's see, Annie is saying, I realize that you are not going to go into the frameworks, but you mentioned cups, emotions, and wands, passion. Could you tell us what the other ones are out of curiosity?
Yeah, sure. So coins are the material world. So your physical body, finances, home, anything that you can touch, anything that's tangible. It often has to do with work as well, because that's our means to creating our security. Swords have to do with our thoughts. So communication, critical thinking, logical thinking, how we express ourselves. My swords in my deck deal a lot with paintbrushes and letter writing and illustration, things like that, because it's a form of communication. Wands, again, passions, dreams. It's the fire inside of you, what gets you up every day. And the cups are the emotions. Yeah, and the frameworks, I can break them down fairly quickly for you, I think. I usually take a full 2 hours to go through the whole thing with my students. But so the first 22 cards, the major arcana that we talked about. Oh, and here's a fun fact. Arcana is Latin, or it comes from the Latin word arcanus. It means secrets. So it's all about finding the secrets, right? Uncovering the secrets. So the first 22 cards, the major arcana cards, they tend to hold more weight in our reading. You'll know that they're major arcana cards because they're labeled, they have a name like the Fool, whereas the others are just going to be numbered. And the court cards will be called a Page, Knight, King, or Queen. So I first break the tarot deck into 2 pieces, the major arcana and the minor arcana. And like I said, the major holds more weight. They tend to represent big life moments. That's why I had you go through and create your life story with the Fool's Journey, with the major arcana. When they show up in a reading, you know that you can kind of use that card as kind of an anchor, kind of a center point for your story. You know that it's going to hold more importance in the story. Minor arcana are going to be more fleeting, kind of more information around that major theme. So that's the first frameworks, breaking that down into those 2 pieces. Then you have the 4 suits, which we just went over, the coins, swords, cups, and wands, and their meanings. And so, so that's the second framework. The next framework is the 1 through 10 journey. Just like the major arcana is a life journey, the 1 through 10 is also a journey from start to culmination. So our ones typically mean new journey, new experience. So like an ace, the ones are called aces in the tarot. So like an ace of wands would be a new journey around passion, because wands are passion and ones are beginning. And then each number, has a meaning. I don't know if we have time to go through all of that, but you can look those up online. A lot of different tarot readers have done the 1 through 10 meanings so that you can add together the meaning and the suit. Another framework that I go over is the 13 stage cards. This is unique to the Pamela Coleman Smith deck because Pamela Coleman Smith was a set designer. And so 13 of her cards take place on a stage like this. And you can see this is a backdrop and this is a stage. And so whenever the stage cards come up, you want to ask yourself, I have a couple of questions you ask yourself with the stage cards, like, am I the star of the show right now, or am I in the audience? How involved am I in this situation? Do I need to be more involved, or do I need to take a step back? Am I acting or pretending in any way, or am I being authentic here? So there are just kind of some questions you can ask around the stage cards. That's another framework that I teach. And then the courts, they have their own framework. Page, knights, queens, and kings also represent a cycle of maturity. Again, you're going to find a lot of beginning, middle, ends happening in tarot because it's stories, stories, stories. So the pages tend to be more childlike. They have the least experience, but they also have the most optimism, hope, and maybe even foolhardiness. Our knights tend to be more like the teen energy, where they feel like they know everything, but they don't have the experience yet. So they have the knowledge, but they don't have the practical application yet. They kind of like my 15-year-old who tells me how I should parent all the time. He has a lot of ideas, but he doesn't have the practical experience yet where he's applied his theories and concepts and ideas. And so he thinks he knows how to be the best parent to my 5-year-olds. So it's kind of that energy. And then you have the queen, and she is kind of more like an adult. So she now has that, confidence and ideas of the teenager. She also has the world experience. And then the kings represent the kind of the matriarchs or the patriarchs or the elderly. They're the ones that have the full perspective where they can teach, and they can kind of offer, counsel to any of the other ages, the pages, knights, or the queens. They kind of have that kind of hierarchy. So that's the framework I apply to the courts, in addition to their suit, right? Okay. So let's say you have a king of swords. So you have expertise and mentorship within the realm of communication. What would that look like? So that's kind of, okay. And those are very basic frameworks that, again, we're not really even applying card meanings yet. So
I can see you can take this, like you can get very specific once you get into the deep meanings. So awesome. And I got to say, like, I could talk to you about this forever. Where can they hear you? Do you share your sound on TikTok or Instagram?
I do. I have so much less on Instagram. I have not gotten, I need to work more on that profile. Okay. I usually just copy stuff over, but my TikTok has tons of stuff. I mean, okay. I have lessons, I have tips, I have tricks, I have funny stories about my kids, and I also do meditative sound bowls and original singing. And that's all on my TikTok. So perfect. Yeah,
that's at Tarot Dawn on TikTok, right? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah. And then you do individual tarot readings. So how should people contact you if they would like to schedule a reading with you?
I do. You can go to tarotdawn.com, and there's all of the stuff for getting set up for a reading with me over Zoom. If you're in the area, there's a place where you can indicate that you're in Kitsap County, and I'll actually come and meet up with you in person. And I do group events, and I'm trying to do more and more classes. I do a lot of community classes, so I'm trying to kind of do more of those, but I'd like to kind of shift more to online like we did tonight as well, so I can reach more people. But yeah, all of that's on tarotdawn.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I know everybody, I loved it. I thought it was just fantastic. Really, I feel like I understand tarot so much better now. And I'm going to totally get a new deck because I have that old deck, which just has it's like, 8 swords. It doesn't tell you anything. And so, yeah, what a great insight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So the Pamela Coleman Smith deck, I feel like everyone should have a copy of this one because this is what's referenced in all of the books. But if you want to find something with just slightly different images, but that still uses this pattern, the Modern Witch Tarot is really beautiful. And it's really diverse, which I love. The Ethereal Visions by Matt Hughes. He just came out with a new edition called Luna. It's stunning. It's done in a kind of Art Deco Muka style artwork. It's gorgeous. It's so beautiful. Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani is also a fabulous deck because not only is every card just jaw-droppingly gorgeously illustrated. Yoshi doesn't use pronouns. Yoshi has referenced a story, a folktale from all over the world for every single card. And so her companion book tells all those stories, and then you can read along with this. So the story, it's stories within stories. It's fabulous. It was actually my very first deck.
Oh, very
Love
cool.
Yoshi's deck. I highly recommend Yoshi's deck and companion book.
John is asking a question too. He says, I might have missed this. I get the overall story. What happened? He says, what happens in a reading? So the cards are pulled and the client thinks up a story about them, or do you both discuss it? So how do you actually conduct a reading?
So when I'm conducting the reading, I'll check in with you, but I'm mostly reading the cards and kind of asking how does this feel? How does this resonate? What I was going through tonight was really more for you for journal prompting and kind of your own reading for yourself. But with a client, I wouldn't typically do such creative exercises. I wouldn't be sitting there saying, oh, are these cards talking to each other? What would they be saying? I wouldn't be asking questions like that with a client. With a client, I would sit down, I would ask if you have any questions, and then we would start to explore those. We would pull cards. I would let you know what they mean. We would start to pull them together. I would say, maybe this is speaking to this, it kind of, I can do a quick example for you for what it would look like. Let's say, well, actually, does anyone have a question that they want to explore? I'll just do a real quick reading. I'll do a 3-card reading here.
That sounds great. So that somebody wants to put a question into the chat, and I can read in the meantime that Callie says, very interesting. Thank you so much. And Radha says, I've never known anything about tarot. This has given me a new insight. Thank you so much. Awesome. And oh, hi, Anjana, great to see you. She's another person who's been with Wisdom Soup for many, many years. So it's great to see you here tonight. She says, what was the last deck mentioned? What's the name of the last deck? She's wondering.
Oh, Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani. Here, I'll show you real quick so you can see. I have it right over here.
Thank you. And if somebody has, it could be any kind of a question if you want to have her pull a card on it or to put together a story. So if you want to put it into the chat, let us know. I know you all have burning questions. And if you want it to be secret, if you don't want to say whose question it is, you could put it in as a private message to me and I won't share your name. All right, let's see here. I think I got it.
Okay. I've got a lot of decks to recommend.
Okay. All right, so you have the one to share?
Okay. So do you want to do the reading first and then I can go over the deck?
Sure, yeah, that sounds great. So we've got a question here. It says, I have applied to sponsor a refugee from Haiti. Could you tell me how this will go?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, so let's just explore. So is it okay if I kind of reframe your question a little bit to kind of give us some more information? Would it be okay if we started with how can I best support my refugee from Haiti?
Let's do it since I think we're doing this as an example. So let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just shuffling the cards right now and I'm waiting for a jumper. I like for my cards to just jump out to you. Oh, there they go. Okay. I want 3. Here we go. Okay. All right. So let's explore how you can best support this situation. So we got the 5 of Wands. This card represents conflict. It represents a lot of competing feelings, emotions, and experiences. This can very much reflect kind of the energy that they're coming in with, a lot of turmoil, a lot of upset, a lot of conflict. And as you can see, there's a lot happening in this card. There's a lot competing for attention. It's almost like we don't really know where we're at. Again, wands represent passion. And so we're just kind of feeling very conflicted in this moment. Then we have the King of Wands. And like we talked about before, the king comes in with this really kind of powerful overview. So he's able to kind of remove himself from the fray. He's able to step outside of this, and he's strong within his own stance. Even if we hold the card here, you can almost say he's removed because he has his back to the situation. We could move the card here and say even when he's observing the situation, he's not getting pulled in. So either way, whether he's observing, wherever he is on either side of this, he's in a position of solidarity within himself. He can handle the conflict because he's not allowing himself to get pulled in. And then here we have the World as our third card. Now the World is that final, so we have a major arcana. We know that this card carries with it tremendous strength and a lot of importance in the reading. The World is the culminating moment of the Fool's journey. It lets us know we've reached the end of a path and we're about to begin a brand new experience. This very much can reflect the experience of your refugee as well, because they've left behind something, a very tumultuous, difficult situation, and they're culminating into a new place, but it's also a new beginning. So here we can kind of see maybe from their perspective, it kind of puts us in their shoes, but then we also have from your perspective, it gives you some counsel and some takeaway. So not to get pulled in to the conflict or the emotional turmoil, but to remain steady within yourself. And you can do this by tapping into that higher self, by leaning into that inner wisdom. And you can also recognize this as an experience for them. So this is kind of a fascinating reading because we almost have a dual perspective, right? And it's funny too how the king kind of moves around in this reading. I feel like wherever he is solid. He's got his wand. He's got his center. And that center is the world. And look here, the world is holding wands. So we have so much passion here. There's a great deal of love. There's a great deal of you know, it's when you're willing to bring someone into your home like this, there is a great deal of passion and love that you are sharing to share your home and to support and to help. But also to remember that they are bringing with them their own passions. Some of those passions are going to be painful. Some of them are going to be beautiful and culminating. This is also something that the two of you share. We all have passions. Find the common passions that you share. So many wands. When we see so many repeated suits like this, we really know that that's a strong suit to lean into. It's a strong messaging system, a strong message that this is an important tool to bring with us. So that's kind of what it would look like. And then I would ask, how is that resonating with you? How are you feeling about what we're seeing here in this reading?
Perfect. That is awesome. Yeah, super, super cool way of seeing how it all comes together. Wow. All right, you guys, this has been phenomenal. Heidi, thank you so much. I think everybody got so much out of it. So we're getting lots of happy gestures here.
Can I just share these decks with you? These are some of my favorite beginner decks. Okay, so the Field Tarot. Now this one's going to be super helpful for you because even though I have shown you basically how to do readings without keywords, or definitions, this deck does have keywords. Now, I don't always love decks with keywords because I don't always agree with them, but I do like the keywords in this deck, and I think that they can be helpful. The drawback of this deck is they tend to lean more into the Marseille style, like as you can see here, for like the seven of discs, the picture doesn't tell a story, and so you have to rely on the keyword. But some of their imagery in this deck, I think, is just absolutely stunning. And so for that reason, I do recommend it. And if you really want keywords, you know, that's a great one to kind of help out with that. This one is really popular. So this is the Field Tarot by Hannah Elizabeth Fofana. This deck is very, very popular. It's not actually one of my favorites, but I want to share it because it resonates with so many people, and it is beautiful. It is very beautiful. And like the Pamela Coleman-Smith deck, every single card is very illustrated. So it's a very emotional deck. It's very emotive. You can easily look at the pictures and find those observations. Every single card tells a story. So I really, really like it for that reason. This is the Light Seers Tarot, and it's by Chris Ann. And then this is the Tarot of the Divine that I told you about earlier. This was my first deck by Yoshio Kitani.
Thank you. Oh yeah, beautiful.
And like I said, it references stories and folk tales from all over the world. It also comes with a companion book that you can buy. But yeah, these cards, it's the Hermit. And because, like I said, this is the Snow Queen reference, story to the Snow Queen. And so because every card tells a story, it just adds layers of meaning, I think, to this deck.
Wow.
So this is a really good one. And then I picked up a few for, and then I wanted to show you the Modern Witch. This is the Modern Witch Tarot. This one is by Lisa Sturl. Again, this one doesn't resonate with me. I don't use this deck a lot, but it's a very popular deck. And the reason why I like this one for new readers is because it mimics Pamela Coleman-Smith's illustrations completely mirrors them. So while the Light Seers Tarot has their own interpretation of the cards, this one, it's illustrated just like Pamela Coleman-Smith, but with modern people. Yeah, this is just it. So it's a really good one, and it maintains a lot of the same symbolism and imagery as Pamela Coleman-Smith. So some people just really love this deck.
Annie is asking, when you do readings for clients, how do you choose which deck to use with them?
So I have my favorite decks that I always use. I pretty much always read with Pamela Coleman-Smith myself when I read for other people. Yeah, I mostly use that one. I'll use Tarot of the Divine for myself sometimes, but mostly I use Pamela Coleman-Smith. She's my favorite. I think when I have my tarot deck, I'll probably use my tarot deck to read for people with. But I will probably still also use Pamela Coleman-Smith in addition to it, because it's fun to read with more than one deck. Sometimes you get really cool readings that way. But yeah, when reading for other people, read with the deck you feel most comfortable with. So those are the best ones, I think, for beginners, for yourself. And now this one is for kids. This is the tarot for kids. This is the one I use with my young kids, my 10 and my 5-year-old twins. The cards are really big, so they're easy for the kids to hold. And the imagery is really, really beautiful. It's really, really gentle. They've replaced some of the cards that can feel scary, like the devil, I think, is distraction, and death is change. And so it's just really, really lovely. So I love this deck for kids. I would even recommend it for adults. I think it's such a sweet, gentle deck. I really love it. And then for teenagers, This is the Star Tarot. This is the only deck I can read with my 15-year-old with. He doesn't like any other deck. I've tried reading with him with other decks. Nothing ever resonates. If you want to read with a teenager, they have to love the deck. They have to. It will not work. It's the craziest thing. But you can try and try. It will not work unless they love the imagery. But yeah, it has kind of a they remind me of tapestries, of like medieval tapestries.
Oh, beautiful. Wow.
And yeah, and they're just really, really gorgeous. And I only use this deck for Scotty, for my 15-year-old son. It's his deck.
Awesome. Wow. Wow.
And the last one I want to show you is the Good Karma deck. This is also a fabulous deck for teenagers and tweens. Sometimes I'll use this for my 10-year-old if I'm kind of feeling like he needs something a little bit more than the children's tarot or the tarot for kids. And its images are just they're so colorful, but they really bring a modern, so like the Knight of Coins is all about hard work, right? So he's in the shop working. So it's just a really fabulous deck. Three of Coins is all about friendship. It also has a wonderful representation. There's lots of diversity in this deck, which can be hard to find sometimes, but it's getting easier because more and more artists are including a more diverse group of characters in their cards. So, and this one is by Carrie Ward. And I love it. I love it for tweens and teens. So yeah, those are my number one recommendations.
Wonderful. Thank you. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. The comments are wonderful. Kathy is saying very interesting. Thank you. Teresa is saying this was magical and so useful. Thank you. Emily's saying thank you, Heidi. This was wonderful. That's great. That's awesome. And then when is your deck expected? And you're saying very interesting. Thank you, Stu. Very interesting.
Yeah, so like I said, I just submitted to US Games and they just sent me back a hold letter. So it's under consideration at the moment. I don't know if they're going to say yes or no for publication.
Yeah.
But again, I'm keeping everyone updated on my TikTok. So that's really the best place to follow me.
All right, fingers crossed. Hopefully that comes together because we would love to see it.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's a super fun night. I always learn stuff at these events. I always do. It's part of the fun. So anyways, next month, we'll see you again, second Thursday of the month. We always have our wisdom soup and the time varies based on the speaker and where they can meet us. So, but I will see you guys again next month. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, you guys.